The morning sun cast long shadows across the barren mountains of Afghanistan as Staff Sergeant Maria Santos adjusted her scope for the 100th time that week. The forward operating base buzzed with its usual activity, but Maria felt the familiar weight of skeptical glances from her male counterparts. At 5 feet 4 inches and weighing barely 120 pounds, she looked nothing like the imposing figures that dominated the sniper community. Colonel James Mitchell stood at the briefing table, his weathered face betraying years of combat experience. The intelligence reports spread before him painted a grim picture. A high-value target had been identified in a Taliban stronghold, but the location presented unprecedented challenges. The only viable shooting position lay nearly 2.5 kilometers from the target zone, a distance that pushed beyond conventional military doctrine. Maria listened intently as the briefing unfolded. The target was responsible for over 30 improvised explosive device attacks that had claimed dozens of American and Allied lives. Intelligence had tracked him to a compound nestled deep within a valley, surrounded by rocky outcroppings that made close approach impossible. The terrain funneled all potential routes through heavily defended, making a traditional assault prohibitively costly. The room fell silent when Colonel Mitchell announced the mission parameters. The shot would need to be taken from a that measured exactly 2,400 meters from the target compound. The distance itself was staggering, but environmental factors made it exponentially more challenging. The elevation difference between shooting position and target exceeded 800 feet, requiring complex calculations for trajectory adjustment. Mountain winds created unpredictable air currents that could deflect even the most precisely aimed bullet. Captain, the unit's senior sniper instructor, shook his head grimly. He had spent 15 years perfecting his craft and held multiple military marksmanship records, but even he expressed doubts about the feasibility of such an extreme long-range shot. The mathematical precision required went beyond human capability, he argued, suggesting that they request drone strike authorization instead. Maria raised her hand tentatively, drawing surprised looks from around the table. She had been with the unit for 8 months, during which time she had consistently demonstrated exceptional marksmanship skills at standard ranges. Her qualification scores ranked among the highest in unit history, but she had never attempted anything approaching the distance under discussion. The psychological pressure of such an extreme shot, combined with the tactical importance of the mission, created a scenario that had broken even experienced snipers. Colonel Mitchell studied her carefully before speaking. Maria had earned her position through relentless determination and undeniable skill, but this mission represented something entirely different. The margin for error was essentially zero, and failure could compromise ongoing operations while potentially alerting enemy forces to their intelligence capabilities. The responsibility was immense, yet something in Maria's steady gaze suggested an inner confidence that transcended her modest physical appearance. The briefing continued with detailed analysis of wind patterns, atmospheric conditions, and target movement patterns. Data indicated that the optimal shooting window would occur during early morning hours when wind speeds typically decreased and atmospheric density remained relatively stable. The target maintained a predictable routine, appearing on a specific balcony each morning to conduct radio communications with his network. Maria spent that evening in the armory, meticulously examining her rifle system. The M82A1 represented the pinnacle of military precision shooting technology, but even this sophisticated weapon had limitations at extreme range. She calculated bullet drop, wind deflection, and atmospheric effects repeatedly, cross-referencing her computations with ballistic software and historical data from similar shots attempted by other military units. Weapon itself weighed nearly 30 pounds when fully loaded and equipped with advanced optics. The .50 caliber ammunition delivered devastating terminal performance, but required precise understanding of its ballistic characteristics. Each cartridge was hand-selected and individually measured to ensure consistency in weight and powder charge. The scope provided magnification up to 25 power, but at maximum distance, the target would appear as little more than a barely visible silhouette. Sleep came fitfully that night as Maria mentally rehearsed every aspect of the upcoming shot. She visualized the sequence of movements required to establish a stable shooting position, the breathing techniques necessary to minimize movement during the critical moment of trigger squeeze, and the follow-through procedures that would allow her to observe bullet impact and assess results. The psychological aspects of extreme long-range shooting often proved more challenging than the technical elements. Dawn brought crisp mountain air and the nervous energy that accompanied high-stakes military operations. Maria's team consisted of herself, a spotter designated as sergeant, and two security personnel responsible for protecting their position during the extended mission. The infiltration route to the shooting position required a 6-hour climb through treacherous terrain, carrying equipment that weighed over 60 pounds per person. The approach march tested every aspect of their physical conditioning and tactical skills. They moved during darkness to avoid detection, navigating by infrared markers and GPS coordinates while maintaining absolute noise discipline. The rocky terrain threatened to twist ankles or cause equipment damage with every step, but they pressed forward with methodical precision. Maria carried her rifle personally, unwilling to trust such a critical tool to anyone else during the dangerous ascent. As they neared the designated shooting position, the scope of the challenge became increasingly apparent. The target area lay far beyond visual identification without optical enhancement, appearing as nothing more than distant structures barely distinguishable from the surrounding landscape. The mathematical calculations that had seemed theoretical during planning sessions now took on immediate practical significance. Sergeant began establishing their hide position while Maria conducted initial range estimation and environmental assessment. The shooting platform required absolute stability to support accurate fire at extreme distance. They constructed a reinforced firing position using rocks and specialized equipment, creating a foundation that would absorb recoil forces without disturbing aim point alignment. The target compound showed signs of normal activity as morning approached. Intelligence reports had provided detailed descriptions of the building layout and the specific balcony where the target typically appeared, but visual confirmation at such distance required patience and careful observation. Maria adjusted her scope settings and began the precise process of range estimation using multiple reference points and laser measurement devices. Wind assessment presented the most complex challenge. The bullet would travel for approximately 3 seconds, during which time any change in wind conditions could cause a complete miss. Mountain terrain created turbulent air patterns that easy prediction, requiring real-time adjustment based on environmental indicators visible throughout the bullet's flight path. Mirage patterns, vegetation movement, and atmospheric disturbance all provided clues about wind behavior at different distances. The clock approached the anticipated target appearance time as Maria settled into her final shooting position. Her body position had been refined through hours of practice to minimize fatigue and maximize stability during the extended observation period. The rifle rested on a specialized bipod system that allowed for precise elevation and windage adjustments without disturbing the overall shooting platform. Colonel Mitchell's voice crackled through their radio communications, confirming that all supporting elements were in position. The mission had attracted attention from higher command levels due to its unprecedented nature and potential implications for future military operations. Success would validate new tactical approaches to extreme long-range engagement, while failure might result in policy changes that limited such ambitious undertakings. The compound remained quiet as the designated time window approached. Maria's heart rate had settled into the controlled rhythm that she had developed through countless hours of training. Her breathing followed the established pattern that synchronized with her natural point of aim, allowing for consistent trigger control regardless of external pressure or distractions. The psychological preparation proved as important as technical expertise in determining ultimate success or failure. A figure emerged onto the target balcony precisely as intelligence had predicted. The distance made positive identification impossible without the high-powered optics, but movement patterns and the figure on the balcony moved with the casual confidence of someone who believed himself beyond the reach of enemy forces. Had chosen his stronghold specifically for its isolation and natural defenses, never imagining that American military technology and determination could bridge such an enormous tactical gap. Through her scope, Maria could barely make out his silhouette against the morning sky, a dark shape that represented months of intelligence gathering and tactical planning. Sergeant whispered wind readings into his radio, providing real-time updates on atmospheric conditions throughout the bullet's projected flight path. The wind had shifted slightly since their initial calculations, requiring immediate adjustments to Maria's aim point. She compensated by adjusting her scope's windage turret, making minute changes that would translate into feet of difference at the target location. The margin for error remained virtually non-existent. Maria's breathing settled into the controlled pattern that had become second nature through thousands of hours of training. Each inhalation brought steady oxygen flow to her muscles and brain, while each exhalation relaxed her body into the optimal shooting position. The rifle had become an extension of her own anatomy, its weight distributed perfectly across the shooting platform to eliminate any tremor or instability that might affect accuracy. The morning sun climbed higher, creating thermal currents that added another layer of complexity to an already challenging shot. Heat waves rising from the valley floor would bend the bullet's path in unpredictable ways, requiring Maria to factor atmospheric density changes into her calculations. She had studied data for weeks, learning to read the subtle signs that indicated optimal shooting conditions within the narrow time window available. Through her earpiece, Maria heard Colonel Mitchell's steady voice providing updates on mission status and target behavior. Intelligence analysts had confirmed the target's identity through multiple verification methods, eliminating any possibility of engaging the wrong person. The legal and operational authorities were in place, making this a legitimate military engagement under all applicable rules of warfare. The weight of that responsibility added to the already immense pressure of attempting an unprecedented shot. The target's daily routine had been observed for weeks, establishing patterns that allowed for precise timing of the engagement. Typically spent 15 minutes on the balcony conducting radio communications with his network of operatives scattered throughout the region. During this time, he remained relatively stationary, providing the stable target picture necessary for extreme long-range engagement. Intelligence indicated that his security measures focused on close-range threats, leaving him vulnerable to distant observation and engagement. Maria's finger found the familiar curve of her trigger, applying the precise amount of pressure that would fire the weapon without disturbing her aim. The trigger had been professionally adjusted to break cleanly at exactly 3 pounds of pressure, providing consistent performance regardless of environmental conditions or shooter stress levels. Her grip remained firm but relaxed, allowing the rifle to recoil naturally without fighting against her control. Crosshairs settled on her calculated aim point, several feet above and to the side of the visible target to compensate for bullet drop and wind deflection. At such extreme range, the actual target appeared smaller than the reticle markings in her scope, requiring her to use reference points and mathematical calculations rather than traditional sight-picture alignment. The technical aspects of the shot pushed beyond conventional military training into the realm of advanced ballistic science. Seconds stretched into what felt like minutes as Maria waited for the optimal moment to fire. The target's movement patterns had been memorized through countless hours of surveillance footage review, allowing her to predict the precise moment when he would pause in his most exposed position. Wind indicators throughout the valley showed consistent readings, suggesting that atmospheric conditions had stabilized within the narrow parameters required for successful engagement. The radio crackled with final confirmation from command authority. All supporting elements reported ready status, with medical and extraction teams standing by for immediate deployment regardless of mission outcome. The political implications of the operation extended far beyond the immediate tactical objectives, potentially affecting broader strategic relationships throughout the region. Success would demonstrate American military capabilities, while eliminating a significant threat to coalition forces. Maria's heartbeat synchronized with her breathing pattern as she entered the final phase of her shooting sequence. The world narrowed to encompass only the view through her scope, the feel of the trigger against her finger, and the subtle environmental cues that would determine bullet trajectory. Years of training had prepared her for this moment, but nothing could completely eliminate the psychological pressure of attempting something that had never been accomplished under operational conditions. The target paused at the edge of the balcony, presenting the clearest silhouette that surveillance teams had observed during weeks of monitoring. Maria's calculations indicated that this represented the optimal engagement opportunity, with atmospheric conditions and target positioning aligned as favorably as they would likely become. The decision point had arrived with mathematical precision that left no room for hesitation or second-guessing. Her trigger finger began the smooth, straight-back press that would release the .50 caliber projectile on its 3-second journey across the mountainous terrain. The rifle's firing mechanism operated with mechanical precision, ignoring the enormous pressure and expectations that surrounded this particular shot. In the microseconds before ignition, Maria's mind processed final adjustments for wind and atmospheric conditions that her subconscious had detected through years of experience. The M82A1 erupted with its characteristic thunderous roar, launching the carefully selected projectile at a muzzle velocity exceeding 2,800 feet per second. The massive recoil drove the rifle backward against its restraining system, while Maria maintained perfect follow-through, keeping the scope picture stable to observe bullet impact and target reaction. The sound of the shot echoed across the valley, alerting every living creature within miles to the presence of hostile forces. Through her scope, Maria tracked the bullet's vapor trail as it arced across the valley in a graceful parabola that represented the mathematical intersection of ballistic science and human determination. The projectile followed the laws of physics with absolute precision, its trajectory predetermined by the countless variables that she had calculated and accounted for during the planning process. Time seemed suspended as the bullet traveled toward its distant target. Sargent maintained constant observation of the target area through his spotting scope, providing real-time assessment of environmental conditions and target reaction. His experience as a spotter had taught him to read the subtle signs that indicated hit or miss even before visual confirmation became possible. The psychological stress of waiting for bullet impact affected spotters almost as much as the shooters themselves. The target area remained peaceful for what felt like an eternity, though Maria's watch indicated only seconds had passed since firing. The bullet's flight time provided ample opportunity for doubt and anxiety to creep into her consciousness, but her training took over, maintaining focus on the technical aspects of the engagement rather than its emotional implications. She had done everything within human capability to ensure success, leaving the final outcome to physics and fate. Colonel Mitchell's voice maintained its calm professionalism despite the unprecedented nature of the operation unfolding under his command. Intelligence units throughout the theater monitored enemy communications for any indication that the shot had been detected or that network was responding to his loss. The broader tactical implications of the mission extended far beyond the immediate target, potentially disrupting an entire operational network that threatened coalition security. Environmental conditions remained stable throughout the bullet's flight, suggesting that Maria's calculations had accurately predicted the atmospheric factors that would affect trajectory. Mountain winds that had plagued previous reconnaissance missions held steady within acceptable parameters, providing the consistency necessary for extreme long-range accuracy. The natural elements that had seemed like insurmountable obstacles now worked in their favor. The scope picture showed no immediate change in the target area, creating the suspense that defined long-range shooting at such distances. Bullet impact at 2,400 meters occurred faster than human reflexes could process, requiring careful observation to detect the subtle signs that indicated successful engagement. Maria's breathing remained controlled as she waited for visual confirmation of what her calculations and training suggested should have been a successful shot. Security teams positioned throughout the valley reported normal activity levels with no indication that enemy forces had detected their presence or responded to the gunshot. The remote location and extreme range had provided the concealment necessary for successful infiltration and engagement, but extraction would require the silence that followed the shot seemed to stretch endlessly across the barren landscape, broken only by the distant echo of the thunderous report bouncing between mountain peaks. Maria maintained her position behind the scope, her breathing steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her system. Through the powerful optics, she watched the target area with the intensity of someone whose entire career had led to this single moment of truth. Sargent's voice cut through the tension with clinical precision. "I see movement at the target location," he reported, his spotting scope providing a slightly different angle of observation that complemented Maria's primary view. The spotter's role in extreme long-range shooting was crucial, offering independent verification of results and providing tactical awareness that the primary shooter couldn't maintain while focused on the scope picture. The figure that had been standing on the balcony was no longer visible in its original position. Maria adjusted her scope's focus, scanning the area methodically to determine whether the target had simply moved to cover or if her shot had achieved its intended effect. At such extreme distance, the difference between a successful engagement and a near miss could be virtually impossible to distinguish without careful observation of secondary indicators. Small cloud of dust and debris became visible near the target location, suggesting that her bullet had impacted something in the immediate vicinity of the intended aim point. The .50 caliber projectile carried enormous kinetic energy, capable of causing significant structural damage even if it missed its primary target. Maria's calculations had accounted for the building materials and architectural features that surrounded the target area, but confirmation required more detailed observation. Colonel Mitchell's voice came through their communications with barely contained urgency. "Intelligence reports radio silence from the target location," he announced, indicating that its regular communication schedule had been interrupted. The absence of expected radio traffic provided circumstantial evidence that something significant had occurred, though it couldn't definitively confirm the target's status without visual verification. Through her scope, Maria observed increased activity within the target compound as other occupants responded to whatever had transpired on the balcony. Figures moved rapidly between buildings, suggesting a level of alarm and confusion consistent with a successful engagement. The body language and movement patterns indicated emergency response rather than routine daily activities, providing additional evidence that her shot had achieved its objective. The ballistic computer that Maria had used for trajectory calculations indicated that her bullet should have impacted the target area approximately 3 seconds after firing, traveling at a velocity that remained lethal despite the extreme range. The projectile's energy at impact would have exceeded 3,000 foot-pounds, more than sufficient to neutralize any human target regardless of body armor or protective equipment. The technical specifications supported the possibility of success, but visual confirmation remained essential. Sargent continued his methodical observation of the target area, noting details that might provide clues about the engagement's outcome. "I'm seeing emergency response activity," he reported, multiple personnel converging on the balcony area from within the compound. The behavioral patterns of enemy forces often provided the clearest indication of successful sniper operations, as their reactions typically revealed more information than direct visual observation of the target. Maria's training had emphasized the importance of maintaining operational security even after firing, as the muzzle blast and ballistic signature of her rifle could potentially compromise their position if enemy forces possessed appropriate detection equipment. The remote location provided significant protection, but experienced adversaries might attempt to triangulate their position using acoustic analysis or other technical means. Remaining concealed until extraction became paramount regardless of mission success or failure. The radio crackled with updates from intelligence units monitoring enemy communications throughout the region. Intercepted transmissions indicated significant disruption in the target's operational network, with subordinate commanders attempting to establish contact with headquarters without success. The communication patterns suggested confusion and concern within the terrorist organization, providing additional circumstantial evidence that the mission had achieved its primary objectives. Environmental conditions had remained stable throughout the engagement, validating Maria's atmospheric calculations and confirming that her shot had traveled under optimal ballistic circumstances. The mountain winds that had posed such a significant challenge during planning had cooperated perfectly, holding steady within the narrow parameters required for extreme long-range accuracy. Natural factors that could have easily defeated even perfect shooting technique had instead supported her efforts. Through her scope, Maria detected what appeared to be medical response activity within the compound, with personnel moving equipment and supplies toward the building that contained the target balcony. The urgency and coordination of their response suggested that something requiring immediate medical attention had occurred, though the specific nature of the emergency remained unclear from such an extreme observation distance. Colonel Mitchell announced that satellite imagery was being analyzed to provide independent confirmation of the engagement results. Modern military operations relied heavily on multiple intelligence sources to verify outcomes and assess tactical effectiveness, particularly for high-value missions with significant strategic implications. The satellite data would provide objective analysis that complemented ground-level observations from Maria's team. The psychological impact of waiting for confirmation tested Maria's mental discipline as much as the actual shooting had challenged her technical skills. The uncertainty created by extreme range engagement meant that even successful shots might not provide immediate visual feedback that clearly indicated mission accomplishment. Professional snipers learned to manage this ambiguity while maintaining readiness for follow-up shots or tactical adjustments as circumstances required. Security teams positioned throughout the valley reported increased radio chatter among enemy forces, suggesting that organization was responding to some form of disruption in their normal operations. The intelligence picture painted by intercepted communications indicated confusion and alarm within the terrorist network, patterns that typically accompanied successful elimination of key leadership figures. The circumstantial evidence continued to support the possibility that Maria's shot had achieved its intended effect. The compound's defensive posture began changing as guards took positions that suggested they were responding to an external threat. However, the extreme range of Maria's position meant that enemy forces would struggle to locate her team even if they suspected the presence of hostile snipers. The tactical advantage provided by distance worked in both directions, offering protection from return fire while making target engagement extraordinarily challenging. Maria's rifle remained trained on the target area despite the apparent success of her initial shot, maintaining readiness for additional engagements if circumstances required them. Professional military doctrine emphasized the importance of follow-up shots when dealing with high-value targets, as initial wounds might not immediately incapacitate determined adversaries. The M82A1 contained sufficient ammunition for multiple engagements, though each subsequent shot would further compromise their concealment. Sergeant reported movement patterns within the compound that suggested emergency evacuation procedures were being implemented. Vehicle preparations and personnel movement indicated that surviving members of the organization were responding to what they perceived as an immediate threat to their security. The behavioral patterns provided strong evidence that something catastrophic had occurred within their leadership structure. Intelligence analysts monitoring the situation from remote locations began reporting communications intercepts that specifically referenced condition, though the encrypted nature of enemy transmissions made detailed interpretation challenging. The mere fact that his name appeared in urgent communications suggested that the target's status had become a matter of immediate concern to his operational network. Such references rarely occurred unless significant events had affected key personnel. The mountain landscape that had provided such challenges for the extreme long-range shot now offered excellent concealment for Maria's team as they prepared for extraction. The rocky terrain and natural vegetation patterns would make their movement difficult to detect even if enemy forces suspected their general location. Successful withdrawal required the same careful planning and execution that had brought them to this position. Colonel Mitchell's final transmission of the immediate engagement phase confirmed what the accumulated evidence had suggested. "Satellite confirmation indicates target neutralization," he announced with professional satisfaction. "Mission accomplished. Begin extraction procedures immediately." The words validated months of preparation and training, while confirming that Maria's unprecedented shot had succeeded against overwhelming odds. The relief that followed official confirmation mixed with the continued adrenaline of combat operations, as Maria began securing her equipment for the dangerous journey back to friendly territory. The successful completion of her mission represented more than personal achievement. It demonstrated that determined individual the extraction from their mountain position required the same methodical precision that had characterized every aspect of the mission. But now, the urgency of potential enemy response added complexity to their movement. Maria carefully disassembled her rifle system, securing each component in specialized cases designed to protect the sensitive equipment during rough handling. The M82A1 had performed flawlessly under extreme conditions, but its continued effectiveness depended on maintaining perfect mechanical tolerances through proper care and handling. Sergeant packed the spotting equipment and communications gear while maintaining watch for any indication that enemy forces had detected their position. The successful shot had undoubtedly triggered security responses throughout the valley, and their escape route would take them through terrain that could easily become a killing ground if hostile forces managed to predict their movement. The narrow mountain passes that had provided concealment during their approach now represented potential during withdrawal. The descent began under deteriorating weather conditions as afternoon clouds gathered around the mountain peaks, bringing the possibility of rain or snow that could complicate navigation and movement. Maria's team moved in tactical formation with security personnel leading and following their column, providing protection against ambush while maintaining the rapid pace necessary to reach safe extraction points before darkness. The weight of their equipment made every step challenging on the rocky terrain. Radio communications with Colonel Mitchell provided updates on intelligence developments resulting from the successful mission. Enemy communications had revealed significant disruption within its operational network, with subordinate commanders struggling to maintain coordination without their primary leader. The terrorist organization's confusion created opportunities for follow-up operations that could capitalize on the temporary leadership vacuum created by the sniper engagement. During their movement, Maria reflected on the technical aspects of the shot that had just changed military history. The ballistic calculations required for success at 2,400 meters pushed beyond standard military doctrine into experimental territory that few snipers had ever attempted under combat conditions. Her success validated years of theoretical development and practical training that had prepared her for challenges that seemed impossible to overcome through conventional methods. The mountain terrain that had enabled such an extreme long-range shot also provided natural barriers that complicated extraction procedures. Stream crossings, cliff faces, and loose rock formations required careful navigation to prevent injuries that could compromise the entire team's ability to reach safety. Maria's physical conditioning proved as important during the withdrawal phase as her marksmanship skills had been during the engagement itself. Intelligence reports indicated that the organization was implementing emergency security procedures throughout their operational area, suggesting that they understood the significance of losing their primary and tactical coordinator. The disruption created by his elimination would require weeks or months for the terrorist network to overcome, during which time their capacity for launching attacks against coalition forces would be significantly reduced. Weather conditions continued deteriorating as the team descended toward their primary extraction point, with wind speeds increasing and visibility decreasing due to cloud cover. The same atmospheric factors that had complicated her shot calculations now threatened to ground the helicopter support that would carry them back to base. Military operations in mountainous terrain required contingency planning for weather-related complications that could strand personnel in hostile territory. The communications equipment that had provided crucial coordination during the mission now served to monitor enemy radio traffic for indications that their extraction was being threatened. Intelligence analysts reported increased hostile activity in several areas, but no evidence that enemy forces had successfully located or targeted their specific withdrawal route. The professional planning and execution of the mission continued to provide protection during its final phases. Maria's team reached their primary extraction point as darkness began falling across the mountain landscape, but weather conditions had indeed prevented helicopter operations in the area. The backup extraction plan required movement to an alternate location that would add several hours to their journey and expose them to additional risks during night movement through unfamiliar terrain. Such contingencies had been anticipated during mission planning, though their implementation tested everyone's endurance and determination. The alternate extraction point lay in a valley that offered better weather protection, but required crossing areas that intelligence reports indicated might contain hostile forces. The team's movement required careful balance between speed and stealth, maintaining rapid progress towards safety while avoiding detection by enemy patrols that might be searching for the source of the long-range shot that had eliminated their leader. During the night movement, radio updates provided additional confirmation of the mission's broader impact beyond the immediate tactical objectives. Elimination had triggered responses from terrorist networks throughout the region as they attempted to assess the threat to their own operations and leadership. The psychological effect of demonstrating American military capability at such extreme range created deterrent effects that extended far beyond the immediate target. The technical achievement represented by Maria's shot began attracting attention from military analysts and researchers who studied extreme long-range shooting techniques. The successful engagement at 2,400 meters exceeded previous records and validated new approaches to ballistic calculation and environmental compensation that could influence future military doctrine. Her success opened possibilities for tactical applications that had previously been considered theoretically impossible. Navigation through the mountain terrain required constant reference to GPS coordinates and topographical maps, as the darkness made visual landmarks nearly impossible to identify. The team's movement discipline remained rigorous despite fatigue and stress, maintaining proper spacing and communication procedures that would allow them to respond effectively to contact with hostile forces. Professional military training proved its value during the most challenging aspects of the mission. Enemy communications monitored by intelligence units revealed increasing concern within terrorist organizations about their vulnerability to long-range attack methods that they had not previously considered threatening. The elimination of from such an extreme distance forced them to reconsider their security procedures and location choices, potentially disrupting operations throughout their entire network as they adapted to new threat assessments. The alternate extraction point finally came into view as dawn approached, with helicopter support confirmed despite marginal weather conditions that pushed operational limits for rotary-wing aircraft in mountainous terrain. The pilots' willingness to operate under challenging conditions reflected the mission's importance and the broader military community's recognition of what had been accomplished through Maria's exceptional marksmanship and her team's professional execution. Ground-to-air communications established contact with the extraction helicopter as it approached the landing zone, with pilots reporting moderate turbulence and reduced visibility that would require precise coordination between aircrew and ground personnel. The extraction phase of military operations often presented the greatest risk, as enemy forces might attempt to interdict helicopters that were vulnerable during landing and takeoff procedures. Security procedures during helicopter extraction required careful positioning to provide protection against potential ground fire while maintaining rapid loading capabilities that would minimize the aircraft's exposure time. Maria's team established a defensive perimeter around the landing zone while monitoring radio frequencies for any indication that enemy forces had detected the extraction operation or were moving to interfere with it. The helicopter settled onto the rocky landing zone, with rotor blades generating powerful downdrafts that created dust clouds and made communication challenging. Maria and her team moved quickly to load their equipment and personnel while maintaining security awareness that would allow rapid response to any hostile contact during the vulnerable loading process. The aircrew's professionalism and experience enabled smooth coordination despite difficult environmental conditions. As the helicopter lifted off from the mountain landing zone, Maria watched the terrain that had hosted her historic shot disappear beneath them in the morning light. The landscape that had presented such enormous challenges now appeared peaceful and empty, giving no indication of the significant military operation that had just concluded successfully. The mission's impact would continue developing over coming weeks as intelligence analysts assessed its broader implications. The return flight to base provided opportunity for initial debriefing and assessment of lessons learned during the unprecedented mission. Maria's achievement would require detailed analysis. The helicopter touched down at forward operating base Chapman as the sun climbed higher over the Afghan mountains, bringing Maria and her team back to the familiar sounds and smells of military life. The contrast between the isolated mountain position where she had made history and the bustling activity of the base created a surreal transition that many combat veterans experienced after intense operations. The weight of what she had accomplished began settling in as the immediate adrenaline of mission completion faded. Colonel Mitchell waited on the landing zone as the team disembarked, his expression reflecting both professional satisfaction and genuine amazement at the unprecedented achievement his unit had accomplished. The successful elimination of from such an extreme distance would generate analysis and discussion throughout the military community for years to come. But the immediate tactical benefits were already becoming apparent through intelligence reports from across the region. The debriefing process began immediately as intelligence analysts sought to capture every detail that might contribute to understanding how such an extreme long-range shot had been accomplished under operational conditions. Maria's account of the technical procedures, environmental factors, and decision-making processes would become foundational material for advanced sniper training programs and tactical doctrine development. Her achievement represented a breakthrough that expanded the boundaries of what military forces considered possible. News of the successful mission had already begun circulating through command channels, generating interest from senior military leaders who understood the strategic implications of demonstrating such advanced capabilities. The psychological impact on enemy forces throughout the region was becoming evident through communications intercepts that revealed concern and uncertainty about their vulnerability to long-range attack methods they had never previously considered threatening. Maria's rifle system underwent detailed examination by military armorers who sought to understand how the equipment had performed under such extreme conditions. The M82A1 had functioned flawlessly despite the demanding environmental factors and unprecedented range requirements, validating the weapon's design specifications while providing data that would influence future equipment development. Every component was measured and tested to document the mechanical factors that had contributed to mission success. The ballistic analysis of her shot revealed technical details that impressed even experienced military researchers who specialized in extreme long-range shooting. The bullet's flight path had followed her calculations with remarkable precision, suggesting that her environmental assessments and mathematical computations had achieved accuracy levels that pushed the boundaries of human capability. The atmospheric conditions during the engagement had cooperated in ways that created optimal circumstances for success. Intelligence reports confirmed that the organization was struggling to maintain operational coordination without their primary and tactical coordinator. The terrorist network's communications revealed confusion and uncertainty as subordinate commanders attempted to assume responsibilities for which they lacked training and experience. The mission's success had created a leadership vacuum that would require months to fill effectively, during which time their capacity for conducting attacks was significantly reduced. The media attention surrounding Maria's achievement began building as military public affairs specialists determined how much information could be released without compromising operational security or future mission capabilities. The story of a young female soldier achieving something that many considered impossible resonated with audiences far beyond the military community, though specific technical details remained classified to protect tactical advantages. Training Command immediately began developing programs to incorporate lessons learned from Maria's mission into advanced sniper curricula that would prepare other soldiers for similar challenges. The technical procedures, equipment modifications, and environmental assessment techniques that had enabled her success would become standard elements of elite marksmanship training, though few individuals were expected to possess the combination of skills and mental discipline required for such extreme achievements. Maria found herself appointed to special duty assignments that would allow her expertise to benefit the broader military community, while recognizing her unique contributions to advanced shooting techniques. The transition from line combat operations to training and development roles provided opportunities to share her knowledge with other snipers, while continuing to push the boundaries of long-range shooting capabilities through continued research and experimentation. The psychological impact of her achievement extended beyond immediate tactical benefits as military personnel throughout the theater gained confidence in their ability to engage high-value targets who had previously considered themselves beyond the reach of conventional weapons. The demonstration that determined individuals could overcome seemingly impossible challenges through skill and preparation inspired efforts across multiple specialties and operational areas. Recognition for the mission came through official channels as military leadership acknowledged the historic nature of Maria's achievement and its implications for future operations. The decorations and commendations she received represented not just personal accomplishment, but validation of the training programs, equipment systems, and tactical doctrines that had made such success possible. Her achievement reflected the capabilities of the entire military system, rather than individual heroism alone. Research organizations within the defense community began studying the technical aspects of the shot to understand how such extreme-range engagements might become more routine elements of military operations. The ballistic science, environmental assessment techniques, and equipment modifications that had enabled Maria's success provided foundations for developing new capabilities that could give American forces significant advantages in future conflicts. The enemy response to elimination continued developing over subsequent weeks, as his organization attempted to reconstitute its leadership structure and operational capabilities. Intelligence reports indicated that the terrorist network's effectiveness had been substantially degraded, with several planned attacks canceled or postponed due to their inability to coordinate complex operations without their primary technical expert and tactical coordinator. Maria's story began inspiring young women throughout the military who saw her achievement as evidence that gender barriers could be overcome through dedication, skill, and unwavering commitment to excellence. Her success in a traditionally male-dominated specialty demonstrated that capability rather than physical characteristics determined ultimate effectiveness in military operations, encouraging broader participation in specialized combat roles. The technical documentation of her mission became required study material at military academies and professional military education programs, where future officers learned about the planning, preparation, and execution that had enabled such an unprecedented achievement. The case study provided practical examples of how theoretical knowledge combined with practical skills to solve seemingly impossible tactical challenges. International military communities took notice of the American demonstration of extreme long-range shooting capabilities, leading to requests for information sharing and training cooperation that could benefit allied forces operating in similar environments. The mission's success enhanced America's reputation for military innovation and technical expertise, while providing opportunities for strengthening relationships with partner nations. The lasting impact of Maria's achievement extended far beyond the immediate mission objectives, as it influenced military doctrine, training programs, and equipment development initiatives that would benefit future generations of soldiers. Her willingness to attempt something that others considered impossible, combined with the technical skill to execute under extreme pressure, the professional excellence that defined American military capabilities. Years later, military historians would analyze Maria's shot as a turning point in long-range shooting capabilities that demonstrated how human determination could overcome technological limitations through careful preparation and flawless execution. The mission became a case study in individual excellence that achieved strategic objectives through tactical innovation, inspiring continued efforts to push the boundaries of what military forces considered achievable. The legacy of that morning in the Afghan mountains lived on through the soldiers who trained under programs developed from Maria's experience, the equipment improvements that incorporated lessons learned from her mission, and the tactical doctrines that expanded to include capabilities that had once seemed beyond human reach. Her achievement proved that extraordinary individuals could accomplish extraordinary things when supported by professional military systems and unwavering commitment to mission success. The mountain valley where it met his end returned to its natural quiet, but the impact of what had transpired there continued reverberating through military communities worldwide. Maria Santos had demonstrated that with sufficient skill, preparation, and determination, even the most challenging objectives could be achieved, setting new standards for excellence that would inspire future generations of military professionals to attempt what others considered impossible. To understand the technical factors that had enabled success, and to develop training programs that could prepare other snipers for similar challenges. The military community's understanding of extreme long-range shooting capabilities had been permanently expanded through her demonstration of what human skill could accomplish under optimal conditions could overcome seemingly impossible challenges through skill, preparation, and unwavering commitment to their objectives. The tactical implications would influence military doctrine for years to come, same careful movement that had brought them to this position. The mission's success or failure would become apparent within moments, determining whether their efforts had achieved the desired tactical objectives matched the expected profile exactly. Maria began her final pre-shot routine, checking every system one last time before committing to the irreversible act of firing. The moment had arrived to test whether human skill and determination could overcome seemingly impossible odds.